mom. But at the very center of who I am or how I became would be my mother. She raised us along with my 3 siblings as a single mother. She hustled. She would jump onto buses and go and buy some fabric, vitenge, Zaire back in the day, DRC, and come and resell, and kept us in school. So that's how I was raised. I was born in the city. I'm city born. I think we were the urban poor, I think, Yeah, so that's my story. Maybe how I come to speak about boardrooms it's as a result of the clients that I interfaced with. Until recently, until a month back, one of the boards I was serving on is a client I have known at the very start when I was starting Legal Mark. I started downtown on King Fahd Plaza, and my client then was, I think, on Johnson, there's a Johnson Street or somewhere there. So when he became big and is big in the region, and I was called upon to serve on the board. So I think there will be people that will see how you work and then maybe one that you be in their space of growth as well. So pretty much that's how I get onto a board. Maybe for Special Olympics, I was just called by the Special Olympics headquarters in DC to ask me if I know about Special Olympics. Do I want to serve? I did not know Special Olympics. So naturally I said, I don't know what it is, so I don't want to serve. So the gentleman insists and says, no, go, let me send you a link. Go read about us. If you like what we do, or if it resonates with you in any way, then we'll speak to you in detail. So yeah, I go online, Special Olympics. We deal with intellectual disabilities. It's a global movement. We are all over the world, and the rest is history. I've been on that board for the last 9 years. So happy to be here.
Thank you very much, Ruth. Ivan, I see I can't be seen. My video is off. Could you kindly enable my video? Grace, I'm going to come back to you after Japheth, because somebody has posted in the chat room and said you didn't answer the second part of the question, which is, if you met your younger self, what advice you'd give to them. So let me kindly jump to Japheth, and then we'll come back to you. So Japheth, your life story, it's a very rich one, and I'm sure everybody online would like to hear and learn. Please talk to us. Thank you.
How many minutes did you say you're giving?
3 minutes.
How many?
3 minutes,
No,
not 10.
I can't manage. If mathematics reflection of age, if Grace got 3 minutes and Ruth got 3, I cannot get 3. I'll have to get 6.
Yes.
But there you are.
Sorry,
Totally.
Japheth, we cannot hear you.
You cannot hear me.
Yes, Japheth's off, team.
Now you see that's how it started. I'm off now. Am I off?
No, you're not.
Yes.
Do we use this?
Apologies.
Yes, analog.
Digital age.
Excellent.
You can't go.
Yes,
I mean,
you're
you
lying.
can't go this. You having this one here, and you have to test it. You have to. Okay, so
Sorry, Japheth, and
yeah.
we've lost video. Team, everyone online is asking for the video. They can't see me. It's not on.
but can they hear me? If they can hear me, I'll continue.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's
so,
now on.
So unlike totally not a town, not an urban village, walking 4 miles to school, you get to English. We started doing English in P4. In P4, I had to do an entrance exam because the school I was at only had 4 classes. And then you have to do an entrance exam. We paid fees, 4 shillings. The old man struggled to pay that. Other people did not make it. It's a long story. Go to secondary school. From the village, you go to King's College, Budo. From there, I go to university. I actually wanted to go to Nairobi University to do a BCom there. But then Makerere introduced it. I was very, very disappointed. I wanted to do law. They told me I have to cram cases, which I realized is not the case. So you could imagine I could have been a totally different person now if I had done law. So, but the other thing is some courage things, like when we were at university first year, the East African community wanted to recruit their own staff. So they came to university. The first time I did something called a psychometric test, they asked me to match pictures of dogs and goats, and I thought, what the hell is this? You know, I mean, I am doing BCom. I mean, we do financial reporting standards, what they're doing. So I actually took the courage to do the tests, the interviews, and then I ended up being taken on by the East African community in the first year at university, and throughout. I would finish exams, go and work when Boom was abolished. Do these young people know what Boom is all about? No, you know, at the university they used to give you money, just free money. You just go and shop and enjoy during our times. And then really, the other one is very interesting. So when I finished university and was an employee of the East African Community Audit Department, I wrote to the guys in Arusha that I want to do an MBA. And the head of HR wrote back and says, you are in the audit department, why do you want to do an MBA? Go and do SCCA. So that's how I ended up doing SCCA, and that's a long story. But what happened is that then everything else started taking its place. I had a job, then went to study in the UK. Things were really rough here. I did not come back, so I ended up staying there for a very long time. Then a job at CMA came up, and I was interviewed by 13 people, and they asked me for my certificates. The one they have been harassing. I said, but guys, I did not know I needed to bring certificates to the interview panel. And then, but they treated me very well, and like some other people, the way they're being treated. But so, but let me fast forward. I became quite active in the accountancy profession. And that will lead to the next question, which you say, how do you get on the boards? So by virtue of being very active, taking leadership positions in voluntary organizations, speaking at engagements, and getting the network going, that is how I ended up being in the Capital Markets Authority and then being on boards. Because for now, we do not see the adverts of boards. I know there are top company secretaries here. The board positions are, you've got to be known out there, and you have to have skills. And the way you are known is not necessarily going the golf course, but doing these type of things that we do here. So what would be my advice if I went back to a young person? I would say, you have skills, can you make them be known? Can you be transparent about it? Can you be accountable about it? Can we read articles? Can we see you at webinars? Can we see you asking questions? Can we see you engaging in voluntary work? And then through that, the skills will be noticed, and then you'll be invited to join boards. So thank you, Rachel. I could have done 15 minutes, but I think other people need to do the bit. But thank you very much. Yeah.
Oh, you did very well. Thank you, Japhet. Please join me in thanking Japhet. The 4 miles a day, was that 2 and 4?
No, just one way. But by the way, that 4 miles was the first school, but the next one I went was 6 miles. But let me tell you, just one thing I made sure. My dad was first very strict. He was a police officer, and then also worked in customs. And then he went to business. He actually had a pickup, but he would never take us to school.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you were not the people being dropped off and so on. No, he would drive his pickup past the school. He say, "You walk to school," and we walked to school. Yeah.
Interesting. Thank you very much, Japhet, for sharing that. And I'll be coming back to Grace and Ruth, just 1 minute each, just to tell us what they'll tell their younger self. But would like to recognize people from Nairobi, Kenya. We have people from Gulu. Gulu is now a big city. Kampala. We have people from Yaoundé, Cameroon, Dr. Pierre. We have people dialing in from Masindi. Thank you very much for joining in. We have 241 people and still counting. So, and we have a room full of people, about 25 people. So thank you very much for joining. So Grace, back to you. In a minute, what would you tell your younger self to do in order to get to the boardroom?
What would I tell my young self? I think in two aspects. One, at a very personal level, and this is talking to myself, 20 years ago or thereabout, at a very personal level. I think it's to do with, now that I'm a parent, I know I loved my mom, not that I don't love her anymore, but I still do, even when she is in I was going to say virtual space, but I knew senior counsel was going to talk about technology. So yeah, I think there is that aspect. I loved my mom particularly when she lived. I wish I loved her more than I did, and that I did love her less than I should have, but probably I should have done much more than I did. And for young people, sometimes we take parents for granted, and I think that is one area where I probably could tell myself a different story. On the professional side and the governance side, like Japheth has said, I think it's the people who you meet along the way and the ones that you choose then to associate with, because being on boards is not an interview process necessarily. Like Japheth said, people need to know you, need to know what you are capable of. So a young self of me would be one that would look to nurture those relationships probably a little bit more than would ordinarily somebody of my age then would have done, and then invest in them. It takes a lot of investment to build these relationships, but also to have the character that then gets invited into the boardroom. It is a big privilege. I was sitting here and looking at my immediate neighbor on my left. She's a senior counsel. She's a former president of Uganda Law Society. President with I think with a big P. I want
P.
Okay.
Only one president has.
Okay, with
the
a
big P.
thanks for the correction with a small P. But who am I? So I feel very privileged for that, and I think any young individual today growing needs to embrace the spirit of cultivating these professional relationships that then we come to live with later in life. That's what I would tell my younger self, 20, 30 years behind. Yeah.
Wow, thank you very much, Grace. Cultivate relationships. And thank you very much, Grace. And Ruth, what would you tell a younger, and you're still very young, but let's say someone 20 years younger than you, what would you tell them today?
What would I say to the younger self of me would be to find a mentor. I entered the career and started just grinding, recall. And now, as a firstborn, I have siblings, they are still going to school, so all I know how to and what to do is work. So I deeply buried myself into work as a lawyer, which is good. But I think you need to open up other networks, find a mentor, find someone, 1 or 2 people, 3 people at whose feet you sit, to not walk some of the things I did alone. It was a bit lonely and hard and tough. I think I was very tough on myself because I wanted to really work for myself and for my siblings. So I'll tell a young person to find mentors, not just in field, but in another exciting field. It could be now technology, it could be sports, it could be anything, whatever, speaks to you. I would actually also recommend a book. Is it Mastery by Robert Greene? Yeah, he writes very well on what are you doing to become a master at what you do, at your craft, for you to gain fluency at what you really want to achieve. So I think he says 3 things in there: apprenticeship, creative, active, and then mastery. So those are the stages through which you go to achieve mastery. Because then when you're a master at least something, become a subject matter expert of something, anything. Could be fashion, it could be whatever it is. Anything goes nowadays. And I like how young people are boldly attacking spaces and becoming, chipping at these spaces to become masters in their field. So I think that's what I would say to the young person.
Thank you very much, Ruth. We're going to buy the book, Mastery by?
Robert Greene.
Mastery by Robert Greene. Thank you very much for that. And now we'll get into the gist of the discussion. And it's going to be a conversation. Please write your questions in the chat room. Thank you for the 255 people that we have. We have people dialing in from Fort Portal City. We have many cities in Uganda now, 11 cities, and still counting. We have people dialing in from Chicago. We have several people dialing in from across the world. But we're now going to start our discussion on boardrooms and why board members are seated on the edge. And we're going to start with the board of the future. So this is to you, Japheth. It is said that the future is not something we enter, but rather something that we create. What, in your opinion, will the board of the future look like and why? And you have 3 minutes for this. Thank you.
Before I talk about the board of the future, I'd like to talk about the board of the past and the board of the present. You need to read the book of Dr. Martin Alike's book, Ringing the Bell, to give you the experience what the board of the past was like. He stayed on the board for 43 years. He used to travel first class, would be picked up by a Rolls Royce in London. He would borrow money from the bank where he was a director, which you can't do now. The board of the past and the board part of the present, but which is changing, was full of people like me with gray hair. You could not get two ladies on the board, let alone young people. It was really full of professionals, accountants, lawyers, and even if the field was technical, you hardly get technical people there. They all went together in the same golf club. I don't know whether they all supported the same teams. They were all so that was the board. They were definitely, I had one board, the minutes were written even before the board meeting was finished. You went to the board meeting, boom, 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 yes, minutes done, go and have lunch, and lunch with champagne, and so on and so forth. There was one board where actually even the board papers were found in the boardroom, and you read them from there. They took you through. The chair was very good, took you through the board, the papers, and then after the board meeting, you left them there. And of course, there were hard, big books like this and so on. That's the past. The current is a mix, and it is dynamic and it is changing. The future is uncertain. The future is uncertain, but what we've got to do is look from the past and current and what has been happening, the world of VUCA world, as we call it, the world of COVID, where all smart people did not know something, those smart scientists did not know what was going on. But within a very short time, they had found a vaccine. The board where, and I know there are some very powerful people here who have run very powerful boards, because if I mention Agnes, then people will say I'm being very unfair to others. But so the board now, board of the future, is going to be diverse, not only in terms of skills, but in terms of composition. And it is not only gender, it is not only geographical, it's not only age, but it's got really to be very, very diverse. You're going to see more young people, younger than even my young sister here, getting on boards. The boards are going to be digital. You have got to be digital savvy. I'm not saying you're going to be the chief digital officer of the organization, but you've got to be digital savvy. The board books, board packs are not going to be, they will be going to be environmental friendly. The board is going to be looking for those people who bring thought leadership in the boardroom. Those who challenge not because of authority, but because of knowledge. You are going to have those board members who have what we call intellectual curiosity. They are questioning, they are challenging, they are asking. But in order to do that, you must also be the board of the future. The board member of the future has got to keep up to date. Now, the opportunities we have today, and they were talking about young people, what would you tell them? You have great opportunities of learning. I was talking to somebody this morning. If somebody asked you, I was doing a training this morning, and I wanted to know the values of the holding company. And within the minute, somebody had already projected them on the board. You had to go to look for an encyclopedia. If you are at Makerere, I was going to see if you were at university, because for us, there was only one university. If you are at Makerere, you had to go to the library and see if you find space there. But so you have got intellectual curiosity, strategic courage. is another thing. That you've got to be strategic, and you've got to get courage to be able to tell the management, to challenge management, and make sure that there is courage about strategy. You know, all these things we're talking about. You've got to be more futuristic. But on the other hand, you've got to really to be trying to know the unknowns and be challenged. So the board of the future is more challenging. It's going to be different from now, both in composition, both in knowledge, ability, and what they can bring to the table. But the values of independence, the values of integrity, the values of dynamics of working together, notwithstanding the virtual meeting, those are not going to remain. But otherwise, it's going to be very, very demanding. And if you've got to get there, and many of you will get there, you need to be prepared for some of these things I've listed down.
Wow, thank you. Thank you very much, Japhet. Thank you, and thank you everyone in the room. And Japhet, I'm sure there's some golfers in the room here who are wondering whether future board meetings are going to be held on the golf course. Is that ever going to happen? Or in the bar?
Future board meetings are going to be held, a number of them virtually. I don't know whether the boards have reached the conclusion now, whether they are going to go back fully to physical meetings, or they are going to have a mix of physical and virtual, or going to go hybrid. Last week, East African Breweries Limited, where I sit on the board and chair the corporate governance committee, we had our first hybrid meeting, hybrid AGM among the listed companies in Kenya. So it was attended by 703 physically, virtually, and then about 1,500 online. So I think what is going to happen, the golf course, no. And by the way, board members are not going to be obtained from the golf course as they used to do, because those who did not go to the golf course didn't get on boards. There is going to be much more wider search of board members, so as to get the mix that I've talked about, the diversity, a very balanced portfolio on the board that you're going to get. But don't stop going to golf and so on, but don't go there for board positions, because you may be very disappointed. Yeah,
okay. Thank you very much, Japhet. And I see we're now 270 online already. And Grace, your first employer, Joe Balidawa, is online, because you did mention and did ask. So Joe, thank you very much for joining, and so many others dialing in from Nairobi, and we see different locations telling us where they're dialing in from. Please keep your messages coming, and you'll all be recognized at the end, as well as the lovely people we have in the room. So Ruth, I'm coming to you now. And we struggled a lot with technology. When does anyone ever get it right? But we're now talking about the digital age, the velocity of change and the volume of new products and services from a variety of service providers with unique value offerings have characterized the digital age. So Ruth, what scares you with regard to the evolution of technology? When is it going to stop? How far are we going to go? You are the expert in this space. Over to you.
I don't know if I'm an expert, but I've decided to educate myself on technology, given my role at the Uganda Telecommunications Limited, because for all intents and purposes, it's more of now a technology company than a telecommunications, if you know what I mean, because you have mobile money, you have many platforms which you must engage at, and you're not typically a telecom. So I think it's coming now to 3 years of my self-education, but I also have young people that are taking me on this journey. So when Rachel calls me an expert, yeah, but stay with me. I've double checked some of the things I'm going to talk to you about. What is getting very scary, and I'm going to refer to a Business Insider article I read, and already you will identify with some of the things. There is an article by Business Insider, I forgot to reference it, but they listed 11 things that are creepy about technology. The first one is what they call the social credit. So you are there on your social media and you are being profiled. Data is being collected about you. So, and they've said already China is using this social credit to profile its citizens. So are you going to get an apartment, for example, or in a certain location because of your profile on social media? They'll be saying, now this one is always making noise on social media, she won't be in our area. You know what I mean? So you can't be in Mienga, you'll be eligible to live in another part of the world. So, and China is already profiling its citizens like that. And so they're saying it's creepy, and I think it's creepy, yeah? That so we have to be very responsible with the way we profile ourselves on social media, because states or some governments are actually doing that. I also looked up, there is a JP Morgan study on hacking and hackers and what they are able to do. And they've listed 3 different categories of hackers. There is one, by the way, one of them is governments. Governments are hackers. But they're saying governments are doing 10% of hacking. 20% are what they are calling hack activists. So they'll hack into your data because they have a cause. For example, if you're producing certain types of products and they don't agree, or maybe you're using child labor and they don't agree with how you're delivering your goods, they will hack into your systems just so that they make the point that, you know, you must get your systems right, or you must adhere to some global causes, poverty, end hunger, or whatever, or end child labor. So that's 20%. Then the 70% are criminals. They are doing it for the money. They break in, they go in there to find something. I'm not audible enough, is that? Sorry. So the 70% are the criminals. They are in it for the money, and I think that is the most scary one. That they are online. They are using Apple Pay or whichever platform that you're using to make financial transactions online, and they are hacking into your systems or your platforms to get your financial information and personal identity, to use it as if they were the ones trading. So that is another creepy thing. The other creepy thing is the robots that are going to be like human. I think Boston Robotics has developed a robot which can enter the room and scan the room and say, he's hiding behind the fridge. Yeah. So So these things, some of them are exciting, but they are calling them creepy according to Business Insider. The other one, obviously, is what you're already doing. Maybe in the room I can see Netflix users. You're already telling Alexa to do something for you on when you're doing your movies or whatever. So, and they're saying, the question is Alexa just waiting for your instructions, or he or she? She? Exactly, yeah. He or she is actually listening into your conversations. There is a debate that is in Amazon really also picking your other conversations, because Alexa is just waiting. And only when you ask a question or Alexa says, I've not understood, or could you say that again? But how about all the time when Alexa is quiet? So that is also creepy. The other one is baby monitors. There are no people with kids here, they don't know. But if you're a modern mother and you're back to work and you want to monitor your baby, so you're back in the office, you have a camera and it's seeing what your baby is doing or what your nanny is doing with the baby. So other people are going to hack into that and start saying, I know where your baby is, because they see you're such a posh mom, you're worried about the child, and so they've profiled you and you're prey, and they're preying on that. So those are some of the creepy things that are developing around technology. Obviously, the rest and we've experienced this, that your system can shut down. You will wake up when your business is gone. So what do? Have you backed up? Are you in the cloud? Do you have disaster recovery mechanisms? I think the rest of it we already know. But I wanted us to highlight the creepier ones, as Business Insider calls them. I think then the last one would be the one that I thought was a bit. It's not creepy, but they're saying that as we continue with the technology, the gaps are going to widen. As you have seen, the big four are bigger than how many countries combined in terms of GDP. The big four: Apple, Google, Facebook, and Amazon. Yeah, they are ruling our world. So it is argued that the wealth gap is going to increase because of technology. Those that have will continue having by a very big gap. So that is the other side of technology, that you wake up and there is these big millionaires overnight because of technology, which is a good thing, and then so the wealth gap is continuing to widen. So those are things to think about.
Interesting dynamics. Thank you very much, Ruth. And Rita, thank you for your recommendation of the book, The Big Nine by Amy Webb. Is a great read on how technology is leading and shaping not business, but humanity. So somebody has just posted that. Thank you very much for that, Ruth. And jumping to Grace now, because we'll now look at cybersecurity, which is really rollover, should I say, from technology. The potential for financial, reputational, and increasingly regulatory damage due to cyber insecurity seems to grow exponentially each year. How far should a board interest itself in matters to do with cybersecurity without getting too operational?
Yeah, thanks, Rachel. Now I've been listening to Senior Counsel Ruth here talking about technology and all the excitement about technology, and the creepy, some creepier than others. Then it reminded me, those of us who studied, not in the East African community days, but reminded me this book called English Language and Grammar by A.J. Bright. You remember? Yeah?
The green with white.
Remember that one?
Yes.
So no sooner has the technology become this exciting than the cyber risks reared their ugly heads, for certain. And I think the people in the room here and the people in the virtual room certainly do relate to this serious concern, serious risk. I don't want to play back what Ruth has gone through. So I want to talk directly to the real concern around cyber. The intentions are as varied as the attackers. Where the attackers attack from is as wide as the World Wide Web, if you like. It is massive. They attack for so many reasons. For some are just basically misusing technology. For example, I think there is a debate whether there should be a technology use control bill. The lawyers introduced a public order one. I'm sure they are about to introduce a technology order something bill very soon. If you think about terrorism, there is real cyber terrorism, real and sometimes in prospect. Ransom, attacks happen, and they are looking to extract ransoms from their victims, stealing of information for all sorts of reasons, for intelligence, for selfish interests, and some actually just do it just to annoy their victims, and many companies have fallen victim to this. Now, for the boardroom, the concern for the boardroom, the director sitting on a board audit committee or a board risk committee, or indeed on the board, the real concern is whether today, with this over-reliance, I want to emphasize the word over-reliance on technology, that organizations have adequate safeguards in the unfortunate event, and I'm selecting the word unfortunate because the word unlikely is very unlikely in the current circumstances. It's unfortunate. Stuff happens, and attacks do happen. So in the unfortunate event that this happens, are organizations ready? Do organizations have what we call in our corporate governance speak, a crisis management playbook specific to cyber. How are they going to respond? For example, let me give an example. If the attacker closes out all your servers instantly, and they send a message that, hey, yeah, $10 million. I was going to say $100 million, but let me say $10 million. You as a board, what do you do? Yeah? What would you have rehearsed in your playbook to say, because this will attack, whether we like it or not, small or big, stuff will happen in the cyberspace, in the technology space. So how do you deal with that? Big organizations that have huge distribution networks that rely on digital platforms to deliver their goods and services. In the unfortunate event that such risks do happen, how do you address them? If you lost all your data, and seated in this room, I'm looking in some direction in this room. If you lost all your data today and you are unable to open your computer, retrieve your information, send emails, transact with customers, what do you do? So the big question, Rachel, is whether as boards are adequately prepared, they have done the necessary tests, they have done the necessary, testing of the capabilities that could happen to make their systems vulnerable to cyber attack. I think that is what then the board needs to do. The board needs to ask those questions that should this happen, what is our response? How do we deal with this kind of problem? What would be the impact? Today, and my SC here sitting on my right runs a technology telecoms company. Companies are building a lot of redundancy in their systems, which are very expensive, to ensure that downtime of systems is not only minimized, but almost eliminated. Now, risks like this actually undo all this value. So this is a real values conversation. How do you deal as a board? How do you deal with that value? I'm sure in Ruth's life, running a telecoms company, a downtime of 2% is so significant to the delivery of your service, to the reputation of your organization, to the confidence that people have in your system, that it certainly keeps you on the edge, it keeps you awake. Now, lastly, and I think this is something that boards and senior leaders need to reflect on. These people, I was going to say this as a no voice, they are always they are always keeping ahead of the game. Yeah? They are always ahead of the game. So as an organization, how are you able to build capacity and resilience to not be caught on the wrong side of the problem? And I think there are more questions to be asked of boards and of senior management than answers, in order to come up with the answers to deal with this challenge. It is a real challenge. It is not a probability that it will happen. The Americans have a bad word that I'm not going to use here, but stuff happens.
Yes,
If you're American, but stuff does what?
Happen.
But
yes.
now, when stuff happens, then what do you do? What is your
How do you
response?
cope with that?
Yeah, how do
Yeah.
you deal? How do you deal with? How do you dig out of the hole
Correct.
to remain afloat?
Oh, interesting. Thank you very much, Grace. Lots of comments coming in.
Can I just
Yes,
say,
please. Ruth, please. Come in.
I'm aware that the US, because one of the questions you asked is, then what are some of the things that the boards can do? I think it is said that the U.S. defense hired hackers for a period, I think, of 9 months to test its own systems. They hired some, well-seasoned, hackers and told them, go attack our system. We want to see what is wrong. And then, thereafter solutions were found. So maybe boards might want to think of some drastic measures like those. Yeah.
No, I mean, you've got to do the simulation. You've got to go. We call them ethical hackers.
Yeah.
You've got to get the ethical hackers. I mean, many organizations use them. They're the smartest guys on the land. They try to hack into your system. If they fail, they will tell you are doing a good job. If they succeed, they said, hey, you know what? I could have wiped you out today. These things you think are strong, sack the chief information officer and and give me the job. But that's true. So organization must test those disaster recovery, and the simulations and do them. I mean, the last time we did a simulation, I actually got scared. I thought it was real, but that's what it is supposed to be. You got to do those. Yeah.
Interesting. Thank you very much, Japheth. And Esther Njagali, thank you. You said that the computer misuse bill was passed recently. Is that the famous Nsereko bill to our senior counsel?
Yeah.
That's okay. Thank you very much, Agnes, for that clarification. Has the president yet assented to it, Agnes? Not yet. It's going to be an interesting one. Thank you. So speaking about the president, government, Ruth, we'll now turn to public sector. And we'll come to you. Governance in the public sector. We are all aware of the budget restraints on governments world over. And Uganda is no exception. Budgets are being cut. PSSD is always on TV saying there is no money. What advice would you give to our board within the public sector whose entity has not received any budgetary release and yet is under so much pressure to have the strategic plan implemented? You're a board member in the public sector, no financing, but you must work. Talk to us about that.
I think I have a short answer. You do nothing. But I think you're on that board so that you are creative. You must find solutions to see that your organization steers through to the best way it can. I think, is it Dambisa Moyo? If you read Dambisa Moyo's book, How Boards Work, there is a part where she talks about, I think it's the last chapter, Innovate or Die. And she's talking about different categories of companies. There are these companies that are swimming in money, so they're looking for what to do with the money. And then there are those that are in survival mode, that your strategy is to survive. So should you find yourself in a situation where you don't have money, but you must just survive, then you map out a strategy to sail through that survival mode. I think she uses the analogy of a bus. No, is it a bus? Or a bus, and those during wartime. There is peacetime, so it's peaceful, and you have all the time to think through things and go to fancy resorts and hammer out strategy. But there's wartime. So when it's war, what do? Yeah, it's wartime. You put your boots on and go to the front line to fight that war and be in survival mode. So the boards that are hardly getting any money and are facing budgetary cuts would have to think like that. So you reprioritize to say what is the most important thing right now, maybe in this quarter, maybe the next quarter. So it's about reprioritizing, but also I think look out for partnerships. It's in that book, I think still Dambisa is saying that, is it the National Archives of the UK? They partnered with a technology firm, and they've gone techno. Who would have thought? I think the institute is 100 years old. It was always full of white old men. So now they brought in young people. People are working with a swag in the National Archives, and everyone is wondering, what just happened in such an old entity. So yeah, government or government-owned entities will have to partner with private sector. People have money. People are there. There are some financial capitals where money is available, and governments will have to empower or to give the mandate to those boards to go look for that capital. There is idle capital out there. I think the other one is the Hong Kong Railway, which has also partnered with private sector. It's owned by government, but you partner with private sector to bring the capital and deliver public goods to the citizens. I think those would be some of my ideas.
Okay, thank you very much, Ruth. Very good pointers to the board members here from various state entities. I see Linda Biribonwa from Petroleum Authority of Uganda and a couple of other board members. The message here is look for partnerships. Board members should get out of the boardroom, go look for partnerships and ensure the budget is financed and not wait for GOU. But let me jump to Grace now, continuing in the stakeholder engagement and partnership realm. The shareholder is no longer a king, but a silent dictator in the entities that we serve. How do we balance this? How do we balance their interests and the interests of the board that the company has, as there are conflicts and risks that this presents? How do you strike a balance?
Yeah, thanks, Rachel. Yeah, the shareholder remains a very important stake. I was going to say shareholder again. The shareholder remains an important stakeholder, even today. However, the spectrum of stakeholders and their importance has significantly shifted and grown in terms of their importance. So how do we navigate this stakeholder space? I think I had my friend Linda is on the line. I hear the challenge coming out from various stakeholders in as far as, for example, the East African crude oil pipeline is concerned. It's a purely serious stakeholder management issue, irrespective of what the shareholders believe, irrespective of what the power of the shareholder or I'm just using it as an example, but irrespective of what the owners of the resource or the owners of the organization think, they have to face the brutal facts of what the wider stakeholders actually are talking about, what the stakeholders are bringing to the organization. And it is much wider than just looking at the shareholders, who in the earlier years were overwhelmingly the big controllers of decisions in organizations. So whether you're a government entity, or you are a private entity, or you are a huge conglomerate, or a small little business, it is so important. I think you need to ask. I'm not going to mention, Rachel, that thing again, but you need to ask these guys on the street who roll Rolex, you know, the things that are happening on the global scale are impacting them. So the way those matters are dealt with at a national level, at a geopolitical level, at a stakeholder management level is so important. So it affects all of us. It affects us as companies, it affects us as individuals. And if you look at, my advice would be, every organization certainly needs to map out properly its stakeholder management space and assess their impact to the organization, to the ability by the organization to achieve its objectives. And then map out the strategies that are going to be used to deal with the concerns that are brought about by the stakeholders. So let me give an example. We cannot ignore anymore somebody sitting somewhere in a corner of the world tweeting about something. I think a year ago, there used to be once upon a time a president, a very powerful president, who used to rule by tweeting. They're just tweeting. And then the markets respond to that tweet. Or am I wrong?
Correct.
Yeah?
Correct.
That used to happen, you know?
Yeah.
And today, information moves with a lot of velocity that before you know it, it has gone everywhere, and every stakeholder has the same information, even better than you, the boards, have. So the issue of stakeholder management is so very important, and it cannot be overemphasized. Every board, I think, needs to be alive to this challenge, because it can make or break any organization. And proper processes and awareness and being alive to the challenges that various stakeholders bring to organizations certainly have to be brought into the boardroom for discussion.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Grace, for that. And following on regarding the EU motion to block our pipeline, what would you advise a board that's funded by the EU and yet has to sign a petition because they're Ugandan? Because that's the stakeholder management. You have two stakeholders. Who is the bigger stakeholder in this case? GOU or the funder?
Okay, the good thing and the most important thing, I'm not an advisor to anybody in this matter. So the words I say here are my own personal opinions.
Yes, yeah? Correct.
Rachel, you mentioned two stakeholders in this equation.
Yes.
You mentioned the European Union, don't you?
Yes.
You mentioned the government of Uganda. But if you peel that onion a little bit, are they only two stakeholders? If you think about it, is it only the European Union? Is it only the government of Uganda? Or are there civil society organizations in the mix? I'm just asking questions. Don't say that guy came and said,
yes.
Oh, and there are civil society organizations.
Correct.
Or isn't there a geopolitical issue? Or isn't, I'm just asking questions, or isn't there now, as we speak, a political spin to the world conversation?
Correct.
Is there a technical conversation about this challenge, whether the thing is going to be buried 6 feet under and valves and etc.? Is it only that? So is it about then re-engineering the solution to be able to mitigate the challenges that are being said by the very many actors? My response to you is, I think this particular issue is much wider than two stakeholders. And that is why this stakeholder conversation is a much broader, is a much wider, is actually a much more strategic conversation for organizations and boards.
Interesting.
Thank
Very
you.
interesting, and thank you very much, Grace. Very politically correct answers, and your disclaimers have been noted. So thank you very much for that. And I would like to jump to Japheth now, and in the line of global disruption. And just as the world was recovering from COVID, we then had Russia, Ukraine. There's always something happening. What, in your opinion, are the three key main global disruptions that cut across all sectors, nations, and why should boards pay attention to this? Japheth, thank you.
For many of you who sit on boards or who prepare board papers, you will always, there is that section about macroeconomic environment. And on the boards where I sit, it's been reasonably stable. However, as you say, it is from the frying pan to the fire. You know, when we saw a recovery from COVID, then we got the problems. We call them macroeconomic geopolitics. So this topic here we have been discussing is about what is keeping the directors on the edge, just about to fall off the table. Now, when the CEO is presenting the report and talking about inflation is being manageable, exchange rates are being manageable, the CBR is in fact going down, you know, budgets are okay, cost to income ratio is, we are managing it, is below 50% and so on and so forth. We are on target. For those of who work on bonuses are going to flow in and come in. I'm talking about bonuses for staff members and executives. This is not for board members. Never get bonuses, and don't try it, please. So the conversation, and you're reflecting on this, it's not only the board members who are at the edge about to fall off. The same conversations are going on in homes. Just reflecting on this, I was scribbling here that we talk about former board. There are board meetings at home.
Correct.
You know, what do we do? Now, some of you, I'm very sorry about you, who had 4 cars, one for kids, one for the wife, one for the husband, one for the other one you don't mention. You know, we are discussing them. So, really, we were very much used. We got used to somehow interest rates being high, exchange rate being volatile. But I can tell you, I did some research. Inflation. We have not been used to high inflation for a very long time. I got figures here. I consulted my colleagues. The last time inflation was over 10% was actually in July 2012. So that's a long time. So now, here you are. We say board members are supposed to be talking about strategy. Board members are supposed to be talking about returns. Board members are supposed to be talking about all these impacts on the P&L, on the balance sheet, on our budgets, on the results that we expect to happen. What impact is that going to have on the stock market? So here comes the board members' conversation now has got to say, how do we survive? How do we manage? How do we deal with our plans and the targets? How do we deal with our performance ambitions? How do we deal with the staff who are now facing inflation of over 10%, where things are changing every day, where fuel is expensive, where everything is costly? How do you deal with that? This is the conversation that is going to be at the board table. And the impact that has on performance, the impact that has on results, the impact that has on all these things that you have planned, all these strategies you have planned, all these acquisitions that you're planning to do, all these mergers that you're planning to do. So as we sit now, if you follow, many will report about the CBR, central buy CBR rate, talk about what is the treasury bill rate. I mean, 1 year treasury bill is at 14%. The last time I checked, it may have done it's gone down or up. Now, how are you going to manage now the banks, even those who committed to following the CBR? I mean, the CBR is going up. So what is happening to your flexible loan and so on? So the discussion in the boardroom, you are following this Stanbic Bank does the PMI, Purchasing Managers Index. Okay. It was below 50. So what is going on? If you are lending money, are they going to pay? Even the early withdrawal you got from NSSF, you may have planned to do other things. Are you going to be able to do them? So at the board table, Rachel, issues of cost, the economy. How about disruptions in supply chain? Yeah, goods are not. You go to a shop or you go to a pharmacy or go somewhere and you wanted a particular item. They tell you we do not have it in stock. We ordered 6 months ago. It has not yet arrived. So this is a very conversation. It's a conversation about cost. It's a conversation about budgets, conversation about whether strategies need to be, whether you need to be tactical. Senior counsel here was telling us about the challenge that government bodies will have when they have not received, their quarterly release. How do you deal with that? So the board has got to be all these good. The diversity that we have on the board has got to give us how do we survive in this environment without collapsing and then come back even stronger or even better. How do we change the way we do things? How do we use technology? How do we use outsourcing? How do we use partnerships? So that's a very big conversation that's going on. And we have not had this, as I said, we have not had this type of challenge for about 10 years. I'll be honest. So it's a very big challenge, it's a big thing, and it's keeping the board members on the edge. And those who are able to manage it will be the one that will survive. Unfortunately, others will fall out. And those who do liquidation, probably they may end up doing some business. But board members, you've got to deal with the situation which is new. After successfully navigating the COVID situation, we now have got to navigate the macroeconomic and geopolitics and so on. And Grace talked about the EU. I mean, there is I read things about nuclear. I thought it was ESG, but I said about a nuclear plant being built by Russians, then Ukraine, then how did you vote and so on. That's for another day. Let me stop here.
Wow, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Japhet. And before we open up for questions, and apologies we lost time in the start, Japhet, is it all doomsday? There must be something positive, really nice happening on the disruption front.
No, I mean, you see, my friend Grace here, we do training with him, and he's really very good at risk. But remember, somebody says the Chinese word for risk is opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, when all these things happen, like COVID, I mean, we are talking about the technology companies. I mean, we all know it, you don't have to be a brainer to know what happened to the Zoom share price during the COVID period. So as we see, as these macroeconomic challenges and supply chain challenges come, they create their own opportunities. They are good investment opportunities when the 1 year treasury bill is at 14%. You know, it creates opportunities. So it's not all doom, but what I'm saying, the board has got to be agile. There is a risk here, macroeconomic risk. How do we navigate it, and how do we take advantage of it? What are the opportunities that are created by this? It is a balancing act. But the sharp board, it is a well-diversified board. It's a board that is thinking ahead, that is going to succeed in this environment, which is challenging.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you very much, Japheth. Very good comments, insights, and would like to now open up. We have a couple of other questions for the panel, but we'll take some questions from the chat room and from the Q&A chat room as well. Thank you all, 274 people, for joining online, plus the 25, 30 odd people in the room. Thank you very much. And Grace, there's a question directed to you here from, just trying to get the question. It was a very good question following on from stakeholder engagement. And it was from Kate Chiza, who asks about how to manage an over-dominant shareholder. What do you do? How do you push back? Or how do you accept or give in?
Thank you. Thanks, Rachel. And I want to thank my good friend, Kate. I think that is Kate.
Yes.
Yeah, when I talk to Kate, the other names are always muted. So, so thank you, Kate, for that question. How do you manage a situation of an over-demanding shareholder? That's the question. Yeah.
Yes. Yes, please.
I think I cannot say there is a template.
Sorry, Grace. Over-dominant.
Over-dominant shareholder.
Yes.
Not demanding.
Not demanding.
Okay. Over-dominant shareholder. I can't say that there is a template for managing this kind of a relationship. I think it takes a level of maturity on the part of management or board or whoever is in that position with the counterparty that they are trying to deal with. One would expect that there is understanding and maturity on either side of the aisle. Sometimes is not the case, and one therefore puts themselves in an over-demanding position, and the counterparty now feels overwhelmed with all these demands. But let's face it, I think sometimes we have to be mature enough to put to design the rules of engagement in this case.
Correct.
Because when you say one shareholder is over demanding, that means therefore maybe what is the position of other shareholders. Corporate governance requires us to treat all shareholders equally. Yeah, irrespective. So when you share this information with this shareholder, it should be the same information you share with all other shareholders, so that you don't appear to be discriminating whether they are sitting in the minority or in the majority. So my comment is, I think what would help is a clear articulation of the rules of engagement in this particular situation, so that there is clarity of what is expected of me sitting on this side of the aisle versus the shareholder or stakeholder who is sitting on the other side. In my local language, my mom used to tell me, and council can help me translate this better. If you are sleeping with somebody who has this thing in the back, what is it called? That one. Yeah?
The hunchback.
Yeah, if you are not brave enough to tell that person that my friend, I cannot cover myself properly, then you spend the whole night in the court.
Yeah.
Those who can translate, can translate. but I think it's about, in a mature way, in a respectable way, being able to say, can we agree on the rules of engagement, which are fair to everybody involved in this particular conversation? So that then the other shareholders don't turn around and say, but this is unfair. And sometimes that is some silent conversation that happens.
A second board meeting on the side.
Kate, that will help a lot to try and bring a sense of openness in the boardroom. Can we say what it is that you require? We will say whether we are able to provide it, and in a timeline in which we are able to provide it, so that everybody is happy. Nobody leaves their home coming to a place of work looking forward to being unhappy. Or is there?
Nobody at all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Grace, for that. Round of applause for Grace. Thank you very much. And Ruth, this is to you. Candy, thank you for your comment. Candy Okoboy says some institutions are actually hiring the criminals to help them point to system weaknesses because ethical hackers are in short supply. But then Ham Namakajo, and thank you for joining, Ham, says, how do you make sure your ethical hackers don't turn black hat? Ruth.
Okay, I know Mr. Namakajo very well. He's an expert. I think he already has an answer. But I think you established some codes. In the case of the U.S. defense, because that too was my question, that wouldn't they also hold your ransom at some point? But I think there are some entities you won't mess with. You don't want to mess with the U.S. defense. I think they can pluck you from any part of the planet. But then, how about for the rest of us? So it's a legitimate question to turn the criminal hackers into ethical ones. It may be that you create a pool of them as experts and inculcate them in your culture or as an entity, as an organization, that this is where we are going. Can you be part of our new culture, to be clean, to be ethical? Most of these things have to appeal to the human being. There are many things you can't change until that human being joins you on the ethical journey, really. So I think then boards would be required to inculcate that culture of ethics and integrity, not just for employees, but even suppliers, external advisors as ourselves. We've been asked to sign many things to confirm that we are not paying bribes to government officials by many of our clients. So I think then those are the protocols that boards will be needing to see in place, that not just because there is suspicion, but because there is that fear that the person you trust the most then will be the one to turn against you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ruth, for that. And Japheth, I'm coming to you now. Thank you, everybody, for your comments. Please keep them coming in the chat room. Somebody asked why the Boardroom Masterclass, and we said would want to give back, because all of us, the four of us, have been fortunate enough to sit on 3-4 boards. For Japheth's case, there might be more than the rest of us, but thousands of them. But we have all been lucky, and so we're sending the lift down for others to be able to climb up and get to the boards. And that's why we have the Boardroom Masterclass. And this is going to be a quarterly event. This is our second, and we'll definitely be having other panelists in the front. It will be unfortunate if it's just Grace, Japheth, Ruth and I, and in the room we have people like Agnes from NSSF, we have Patrick from FSDU and ABI, so we'll definitely invite many others to join us and sit with us. We have the president of the Human Resource Managers Association, Ronald, in the room, and so we'll keep having a change, but we'll have this on a quarterly basis. So Japheth, a question from Titus Watelo. Titus, thank you very much for joining. What knowledge areas are critical for a board member? Is there a course? Is there a PhD? Is there a master's? What should people do, and what should they learn? Or what should they ignore? Thank you.
One of these, I don't want to call it a job. I don't know whether it is a job, but maybe a responsibility that does not really have the syllabus and so on. But the biggest thing we need, it's the knowledge, it's applying your knowledge that you have from different fields, because we've talked about the diversity that we have. You can, of course, you'll attend courses to say, roles and responsibilities. You'll attend courses to in the specific areas, whether it be audit, whether it be risk, whether it be cyber, whether it be digital. But the important things really you need to know is, one, you use your knowledge that you have acquired through reading and so on. You use your experience that you have acquired through working, and I'm not saying 20 years experience and so on, but the experience and expertise you have got, and then see how do you apply that to oversee, to plan, to have the leadership, to show the tone at the top, to be able to lead others and give governance and give oversight. So it is a combination of that. So in other words, you can go and do a PhD in governance and so on. It does not really, you can put it on, on your CV and so on. It does not necessarily put you through the nominating committee process of you getting on the board, because it is a demonstration. First of all, any good company that is looking for board members will have to identify and define what skills are they looking for in terms of knowledge, in terms of experience. And you really need to fit into that one. And then, of course, the others, the due diligence of the integrity, ethics, what are you going to bring on the board? And then, of course, looking at managing the dynamics of diversity these days. Very, 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 very critical. I mean, so that you have a board that is diverse. And then how do you apply your skills? Will you be independent? And you asked a question about the shareholder, the dominant. Kate, I think, did ask the dominant shareholder. Yeah. As a board, we've also got to be conscious that the shareholder is a very powerful body. I mean, if your dominant shareholder is government, then when I hear you saying, but there is politics on the board, give me a break. I mean, the dominant shareholder is a political animal. So, but how do we balance it? In other words, if you have 10 XMPs all on the board, you may get into problems, may become a parliament other than passing laws or making the decisions. I don't want to mention the word nyege, I may get into trouble. Yeah, but this is really what it is all about. So the knowledge, the expertise, the experience, and then the demonstration that you can add that value because of your expertise and your experience. We would like to hear somebody on the board saying, yes, when I was doing this at such and such a place, we faced this challenge, and this is the way we did it. But then you also want, these days we want people called disruptors. Disruption used to be a very negative word, but these days people say, oh, we want a disruptor on the board. That person who is going to ask those questions where the experienced guys are saying, but do I ask that? And saying, hey, but you people, you are discussing this and this. Have you ever thought about this? And then you want that board member. So that's what it is. There is no, what do you call it, Grace? You like the word, is it a playbook? Is it a textbook? Is it the book? Yeah, that book is not there. But then, of course, I would encourage you, am I allowed, that there are organizations that are listed here in my back that can help you get those skills.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for that, Japheth. And since you're still on the floor with the microphone, an interesting question from Alfred, and I'll allow each of you to opine on this. Alfred Kabuchu, thank you very much for joining. And Alfred says, as a board, how do you manage the situation of personal integrity and self-preservation of board members or board members serving their positions versus pushing for the best objectives of an organization, especially when dealing with strong CEOs or management, or cases where the CEO is stronger than the board chair?
Right. Now, not in the boards I sit on. No, when we're talking about the skill, one of the things that I talked about due diligence that we really try to manage at the board is this thing we call conflict of interest. We are all in a way conflicted, but what you want to do is that really have all there will be annual declaration, there will be checks and so on, so that when you sit in the boardroom, you may have, everyone has an interest. You may get on the board and you say, what I would like to pursue for me is, say, the interest of the youth, right? That is my only interest. But when you get on that board, articulate the interest of the youth, but be able to say, but what at the end of the day is in the best interest of this organization. Therefore, you may have to subjugate personal interests. It is very difficult to get a board member, if you want the skill that we're talking about, who may not have conflicts, but these conflicts need to be managed. And the issue of checking the integrity, checking the dealings that they do. We have rules, for instance, if you are a shareholder in a company at a particular period in time, call it a closed period, you are not allowed to deal with the shares you are in that company because you have inside information and so on. So I need to also put that in the picture, that it is all very well having the skills and the experience, but you must also have the integrity, because the reputation of the organization will be killed if you do not have the integrity, because you are setting the tone at the top. And that is very, very critical. So, Bwana Kabuchu, important question. How do we do that? Regular asking the question, regular declarations every year, regular, regular checking of whether things have changed, whether should have changed. But then also, we'd like to have board, the people who have the integrity say, you know what, I have now entered into this arrangement. I think it is conflicting, or if it does, this is how I'm going to manage it. So otherwise, you are not really going to get the board members with that experience that you are looking for, because somehow they will be conflicted. Yeah, you may, if you are with grace, and everyone in the board supports the same team, you may have a problem. So you need diversity. So that's why we have on the panel Arsenal and Liverpool.
And Liverpool.
And I don't know which is in the lead. That one I don't read the league tables.
Interesting, and interesting. And Ruth, many boards have same question, but at times when boards raise an issue, all the CEO does is send them on a trip to Spain for a conference. And then they'll come back and try to raise the issue, and then they'll go to Joburg for a world climate summit, yet it's not a climate change board. What do you do in such cases? Because it's happening.
Can you tell me the board? That's one I want to join.
Because it's happening. So how do you handle that? And that's Alfred's question, I believe.
I think these are fundamental questions. So you'll be needing bold leadership of that board that decides which way to go. And I think this is now the chair, the board chair, and maybe if, let's say, if it's family owned, and maybe family members that own that business, or if it's a listed entity, a group of co-directors that see the vision of where they want to take the company. You will not succeed as a company if your template is unethical behavior. And I think now with Twitter and all these spaces, the employees are going to call you out. They're going to call you out. They're going to be anonymous, and they're going to call you out. But I also wanted to attack this question through the CEO angle, the rock star CEO, this untouchable CEO, and a darling, to all these board members, and maybe doing things unethically under the table, but because they can pay you off as board members. So those are fundamental ethical issues. So as a board chair or as a board leader, you will have to go back the drawing board and say, this is not the board I want to lead. The one I want to lead will move like this. You may even have to fire that rockstar CEO just so that you change the culture of that organization and go, on a clear path where you want to take the board. Yeah, but I think it's in a similar setting. We had a chat over this rockstar CEO issue. It's a big issue in many markets, and especially in this market. But you have to deal with it head on. I think the power play between the chairman and the CEO is normally an issue. You find a chairman who is a retired civil servant, and the CEO is a rock star in the market. Yes. There are power play issues there. Yeah. But get serious board chairpersons that know where to take the organization, and they take that organization to that clear path.
Thank you.
Rachel,
yes,
I recommend talk about a rock star CEO. Of course, we want CEOs who are performing, who are excellent, who bring in results, who are responsible, who know about society. But look at if you haven't already done, look at the BBC documentary, the bank that almost broke Britain, Royal Bank of Scotland CEO. It's about 20 minutes. Just Google it. Go and have a watch, and you can see what a rockstar CEO can do to an organization. So yeah, I would recommend that. Have a look.
Interesting. And Grace, thank you, Japhet. Grace, your perspective on this.
I-
You're receiving an air ticket to go and watch a Liverpool match from a CEO who has issues at work.
Yeah, of course. Of course, I would love to go to Anfield at the Merseyside and enjoy and enjoy the sleek, beautiful game. You know what I'm saying? But
You don't get beaten.
but I think that on a more serious note, I think the question is then, why are you on the board? I think that's a fundamental question.
Good question.
I think with reflection, you could say many people get approached to be on certain boards, and some people who have strength of character and personality decide to say, I'll be on that board. I'm sorry, thank you very much, thank you, but no, thank you. You know? The other comment I wanted to make, Rachel, I hope that point is made.
It is,
because
thank
I
you.
don't think board members are hostages onto boards.
Correct.
They can choose, and I'm sure, not necessarily me, of course I can, but if there's a director like Japheth, can go to Emirates and watch that other team,
Yes,
at his own cost, and that's fine. That's also talks to these very needy directors. Then those directors get captured
Correct.
by what my learned, can I say so? My learned somebody here on my left says rockstar CEOs. They think I'm going to use Ruth's name because she's not needed. They think Ruth is needed, so let her take a ticket and go away. And they think it's prestigious to travel, not knowing that Ruth has traveled all over the world and does not even want to travel.
Correct.
So as directors, you need to ask yourself, why are you on the board? Secondly, is the question of, then when you are on the board, what do you do? The significant part is probably the simplest part, is to ask questions and get answers. I was going to use the word demand for answers. I once sat on a board where a chairman of the board reminded directors that for us, we are directors, so our job is to direct.
Yes.
So we direct. No,
Yes.
but to demand for answers, ask questions and demand that the questions are answered to your satisfaction. So if they are not answered to your satisfaction, then what do you do? What you do is then depends on how you as an individual,
Yes.
your character, your strengths, your integrity, your ability to lead, because you are on that board to provide the necessary leadership, not for your own self, but you are an agent of the shareholder for this organization for which you are a steward. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Grace. Very interesting insights. And we have a group in the room as well that will be allowed to ask just 2 questions in the interest of time. But I take note of the fact that the last masterclass we had, Grace Ndiareva asked a question and it was not asked. It wasn't read out. So Grace, thank you for joining again. And I'd like to ask your question this time round. And Grace says, since all the panelists are board members in some companies, and after submission of Grace and Japhet Kato on BCP, redundancies and costs enjoyed by telecoms, is it possible to share with us if any of your boards have specific committees on ICT? So Grace is pushing you under the bus here. And to both gentlemen and to Ruth, of course, as well.
Yeah, yes, we have a committee, actually. We call it engineering at Stambik, and at EABL it is a combined committee. Deals with risk, and the IT risk are covered by that. But you know, in banking, especially when you have gone very, very digital and heavy dependence on technology, yeah, we have engineering committees. Actually, we have engineers now. Even there is a head of engineering. If you came in, you'd think it is a construction company, but that's because of the way it is going. So it is no longer just information technology. It is actual engineering. It is actual head of digital, head of information storage. So if you look at a board of some institutions, what it used to be and the committees they had 3, 4, 5 years ago, they have completely changed. Yeah, you have a board committee dealing with that. And then, of course, as I said, the challenge is always getting the right board members to be able to oversee those committees. But we do have.
Thank you, Japheth. Ruth?
No.
No. Are you looking to set up one at UTL?
Well, the UTL structure is funny, and I keep telling people I'm the board chair, I'm the MD, and so it's very ripe for abuse. I'm everything. So I'm not the ideal, UTL is not the ideal setting for this conversation. But on 2 boards on which I have served, private sector, so the answer is no. I've not seen ICT boards, but also committees. But may I add that it also depends. I mean, if IT is core to what you do, like banking and finance, I think it's an imperative for the financial sector. But is it an imperative, let's say a cosmetic company, by way of example, or for a farmer? Is it an imperative? And because it's not, then you may rely on independent advisors to come in once in a while and give you that advice. Obviously, that too has its issues. Maybe those advisors may fight with your CEO and your other leaders in the company. But I think the point I'm making is that people should not ignore it. It may not be your core, but still find a way of having that conversation in the boardroom via the route of independent experts advising the board on how to use ICT in your organization.
Thank you very much, Ruth. And Grace, finally.
I think in one of the organizations to which I am associated, we do recognize the importance value of ICT, of technology, as a driver of growth. So to answer your question directly, what we've done there is to set up 2 separate committees. One is a committee that looks after growth, that looks after strategy. Yeah. Specific committee to look at opportunities that will help drive the growth of the organization, obviously pretty much driven from an IT technology digitization perspective, but also cognizant of the fact that you need to have proper oversight. So the risk committee of the board is very heavy on the way it is composed to provide proper oversight on the emerging risks in the technology space. So in a way, on reflection, I think the good balance helps, because there is this committee that helps to identify opportunities for growth in the environment, in the technology environment in which we are working. But there is also a separate committee looking at the oversight, the risk management, asking the questions that, what if? Is everything going right to drive the growth in the right direction on a sustainable basis? Yeah. So yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Grace. Thank you, Japheth, and thank you, Ruth. So we'll allow 2 questions from the audience in the interest of time, and we kindly seek your indulgence. It's 4:52. We started 20 minutes late, unfortunately, due to technological challenges. So we kindly ask for 10 minutes, 10 past 5, for us to be able to take 2 questions from the audience, and for us to kindly ask our panelists to wrap up. Thank you. There are a couple of hands in the audience. We have Emma, if we could kindly take the microphone around, and if we could turn the screen onto them. Camera crew, kindly. Please keep your comments coming, your questions. Thank you very much for dialing in, for joining us this afternoon. It's not on. Emma, if you could kindly help. Excellent.
To you, not to miss the opportunity.
I'm called Gloria Jongwe. I'm from Hoxton, Africa, a business development service consultancy. I have a comment. My comment was when I lighted on Rockstar CEO. What came to mind was Adam Newman, the founder of the startup called Viewer. I don't know if all of you have seen that.
We work.
Documentary.
Yes.
He was a rockstar CEO until he stopped performing, and the board had to take him out.
Emma, it's okay. We can hear you. We can hear you loud
Okay.
and clear.
Can you hear me now?
The other was better. Emma.
No, this is
Okay.
better.
Okay.
Excellent.
So that came to mind. Thank you very much.
Thank
My
you.
question is, I have noticed that for startup companies that are coming up recently, maybe in Africa and in Europe,
Yes.
there's always a board and a board of advisors. What are your thoughts on that?
Thank you very much. Very good question. And is it to anyone in particular or across?
Japheth seems very
Ready to
ready
take
to
it.
take it on, so over to you, Japheth.
Thank you very much. Yes, let's take a couple of questions and then we'll
Thank you so much. Good evening. I would like to appreciate our panel, first of all, for the reason you gave for setting up the Boardroom Masterclass. It's a noble cause. Thank you for giving back to us. Learning never ends. In the interest of time, I have 3 very short questions. 1, how do you deal with conflicts within the board and between the board and management? 2, and I'm glad Ruth has now, I didn't know you were both chair and MD. I'd written this question down at the beginning. How does the board effectively exercise oversight in a situation like yours, where you're wearing 2 hats? God forbid you're the rockstar CEO, and therefore rockstar. How will the rest of the board exercise oversight over you? Then thirdly, to the question that Kate asked about shareholder dominance. In a situation where the board is actually comprised of majority shareholder representatives, so it's a conflict of interest situation,
Yes.
akin to the chair CEO question, how does the board distinguish its role as an oversight body vis-a-vis the shareholder interests? And to the question of dealing with a dominant shareholder. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Agnes. Let's clap for Agnes. Very good questions. And then we have a question from Joyce, who's joining us second time round.
Thank you so much. Thank you for this opportunity. I really appreciate being here. I have 2 questions. The first one, the topic for today is the changing boardroom. And I'm asking this on behalf of many of those on the call and those of us who are here regarding the younger generation and the issue of the career board members. Now, we are looking at a changing boardroom, but we have this group of persons who are career board members. What do the younger generation do? Do you wait it out?
Okay.
Because they are not about to leave. And in connection with that is, where is the space for the learning board member? Because if you have to have a certain number of skills in order to be a board member, where is the space for someone who wants to learn, and yet you need to have attained, a certain number of skills? Then the second one is it's a personal question really, and it has to do with self-care. IT has opened up the boardroom to so many, you can have meetings all over the place. You can have it in your car and all that. I'll give you an example. Today, just this morning, I woke up to a board meeting at home. Following the board meeting at home, I had to go and work at a company where I'm the CEO. Halfway through that, I then had a board meeting with another organization where I'm a board member. After that, there's another company I work with where we manage events, and I had to have another meeting there as well, and then eventually come here. And I'm sure that's the case for many of the people who want to, go up and, achieve as much as they can. And I'm sure that represents all of you up there. I'm wondering how are you handling self-care? At the end of each day, you come out saying, yes, I've accomplished X, Y, Z, I've done this, I've achieved this, I've made this kind of money. But what about self-care? How do you refill that cup? What are you doing to refill your cup such that you have the energy for the next day? Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Joyce. And I see another hand up, but please allow us to take these questions, and then we'll have another round of questions, because the gentlemen are complaining that the ladies have taken over.
But they did put their hands up
They
first.
did. The hands have been up. I see two more hands up. Joel and Tadeo and Patrick, was your hand up? It wasn't. Excellent. So Joel and Tadeo.
Good evening. Joel Sengendo, Management Analyst at Stedman Global. I had a question around the Power Play CEO. What's the role of the company's secretary in the management of these board affairs? If you have a Power Play CEO versus a CEO, Power Play CEO versus a chairman of the board, and where does the company's secretary come in the management of these board affairs? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joel. And final question from Tadeo.
Okay, my name is Tadeo Karumba. I work with Stedman Global as Senior Associate. My question to the panel is that as a board chair, how would you manage the informal communication between individual board members and then the staff? Not necessarily the top management staff, but the lower level or middle level management staff. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tadeo. We are looking at the questions, and we have 8 questions or so. I will ask the panel to start. Let's start with Japheth, because there was a specific one to Japheth from Gloria, and then I'll pick on Grace, Ruth, and Japheth subsequently. If we could kindly start with Gloria's question. Thank you, Japheth.
Yeah, thank you, Gloria. Absolutely, that model does work for startups. For most startups, you find that the directors, the board actually has more executive directors, people who actually work in the organization. So they sit on the board. Because the structure that for a more advanced company of having independence, that you have got to look for them, set up all these committees and so on, it does not work very effectively in a startup. So in a startup, you tend to get more, the owners are involved on the board, and they're as opposed to having independence. So to get an outside opinion, sort of independent opinion, you get an advisory board that is not terribly structured, that does not necessarily have to meet every quarterly, that can be contacted from time to time. The only thing the lawyers would have to say is what are the fiduciary duties of this advisory board. Because if I remember my little company law, director is not whether you are a director or not a director. If your directives and instructions are done by the company, then you probably become a director. But it is a very good model where you have those who bring in outside opinions, outside expertise, but they are not really within the structure of the board structure. So a good model for startups, and I would recommend it. Some organizations have a board, an advisory board, also an advisory council. That is going a bit to the extreme, but it is a good idea to have an advisory board. As much as it is a good idea for even established boards to have advisors in areas where they do not have the skills on the board. So if you have a board and you are lacking a skill, maybe audit, maybe risk, maybe investment, then you get an advisor. Not a board member, but advises the board and the committees. So it is a good structure. Feel comfortable with it. As the company grows, then it can really have the more formal, structured board. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Japheth. And Grace, do you want to take on Agnes's questions as a pool? And then Ruth will handle Joyce's questions, if that's okay.
I thought Ruth was going to handle the question of oversight in Ruth versus Ruth.
Ruth, someone else has to help her.
Okay, no, I think there are 3 questions. How do you deal with conflict between the board and management? I think that was the first question. I'll deal with that one first. I think for me is you want to assume that there is willingness on either side to improve the relationship. If that coalition of the willing is lacking, then you are starting from a very tall climb, unfortunately. So what does that mean? Probably need to cultivate an environment where you create a level of willingness on either parties to appreciate each other, to deal with the conflict. Unfortunately, some of the conflict is manifested by personal interests, conflict of interests, and sometimes sheer malice. Then that means that the willingness is lacking. If you are sitting in a situation where you are really willing to ensure that this relationship works, is to try and get the warring parties to get to a journey of maturity, if that makes sense. Are we able to have mature conversations on either side of the divide to ensure that we can, because nobody is always willing to be in a fighting mode. When somebody is always willing to be fighting, then that person, that individual is unwilling to mend fences, even with the best of efforts. The other thing, I think it also, Agnes talks to your third question in a way that then who comes onto the board and how does that individual or those individuals come to the board? It will be very helpful, especially when somebody is in a neutral space where they are willing to make these relationships work, to use the power of influence to see that Japheth rather than Grace comes to your board. I'm just using that as an example. So that then you don't start at the very bottom of the mountain climbing up. And disagreements happen. We always don't have to agree. But when we agree on matters of substance, on matters of that are going to help take the institution forward, then there's absolutely no problem. We should all be mature enough to appreciate that. But my view is it is a journey. Sometimes when the fire is too much, and you ask if I am a director in an organization where we are always fighting, then is it worth it? Besides, directors don't get paid substantially as I'm talking about the majority of directors. You know, so as on a personal level, you need to ask yourself, why am I on that board? Should I continue being on that board? In a neutral space, you need to ask yourself, what can I do to help this situation, to get these parties to a willing, to converge at a point where they are willing to resolve the conflict. If they are unwilling, it's going to be a difficult battle. The issue of oversight, where one is the chair, she is the executive, I'm saying she because ladies are always first. I have a feeling that this is a transition kind of arrangement. I think in the best endeavors, I think there should be a plan or a journey to regularize proper corporate governance to ensure that there's proper oversight. It's so difficult to come this way, ask the question, and turn around the other side and go answer the same question. But again, there is help. There is help. How do you manage? There is help, for example, independent assurance providers and advisors in a situation like Ruthie's can be very helpful. As long as the person sitting in Ruthie's position is willing and is mature enough to say, I am in this difficult situation, where can I get help from? So I can go to Grace. Grace is independent-minded. He will give me an honest opinion about what I'm doing, a proper assessment, and give me advice. Then I can use that advice to help me navigate the situation as I work through the transition. That is one example. The other example is what Japheth has alluded to. Statutorily, you might not be able to appoint a board, but there is no reason why you cannot have advisors that you trust, that you respect, that can help you run the organization in that environment. Then the question of shareholder dominance. The question, I think Agnes and Kate have something in common here. How do you deal with the situation where the majority of directors are shareholders representative? That's the question I captured.
Yes, please.
Yeah? I think that's why I said it's kind of related to the first one. It could be a conflict, but it also depends on the maturity of the shareholders, the directors, that the shareholder have assigned the duty of being their agent to the organization for which they are directors. What do I mean? I mean, even a sole proprietor or a family business that appoints all the shareholders, right, would like to have good directors. So I think I mixed up the conversation. Even in a family business where the owners appoint all the directors, those shareholders would like to have good directors to help them provide oversight and advice and stewardship to the organization. Now, that would be a utopia situation, a perfect situation. Sometimes the hand we are dealt is not like that. My advice would be there is this thing in management called soft power, the soft influence. And that's why leaders are called to lead. Are we able to influence this block of shareholders? For example, at the point of setting strategy and align and get a level of alignment, because that becomes your print that you follow. You're agile about it from time to time, but every time challenges of dominant shareholder into an organization comes to play, you go back and reflect and say, we are here as your agents, right? This is what we agreed to do. Other factors being equal, can we reflect on why we are here to do what we there is nothing you lose. If you are in a position where you're not very vulnerable, you can ask the tough questions that, ladies and gentlemen, what do you want us to do? Do you want to change the strategy? What do you want to do? I think sometimes, and talking for myself, the journey I've traveled, sometimes we become shy to confront these kind of situations. And then they start to grow ugly, they grow ugly. Before you know it, you cannot manage, you know? But it is better address these situations in the early days. So the conversations, training, for example, for directors is not only for transferring of knowledge, it's also for creating a safe environment where these conversations can take place. And you come out and say, remember our conversation we had? Sir, this is what we agreed. Are you changing your stance? You know, without fearing of reprimand. Even if I was to be reprimanded, so what? I'll still have a life and go on. I am not very vulnerable. I want to encourage, especially as Ugandans, sometimes we become so uptight and so shy, and we feel, you know, this the director is still a human being and we can have a conversation.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Grace. Lots of comments coming in, and as we look at, we head on to Ruth. Emma, please put the poll up so that we do not lose the people online, just for us to be able to do the poll, the closing poll. And I see a comment from Hope Atire. Hope is the company secretary for UDC. She says, great discussions, thank you. My suggestion is that the next Boardroom Masterclass panel should include a company secretary so they can share another view. very good insights, and Hope, thank you. We will definitely take that on board. So Ruth, Joyce had a couple of interesting questions, and 3 questions, I believe. Over to you, Ruth. Thank you.
Thank you. I think maybe I didn't mention that we keep sharing things here with Grace transparently. Eh? Yeah. I think Hope should know that my firm serves as corporation secretary for a few companies, so we have perspective as well. But I think also the point is well taken. It's really well taken. Thanks for that. I wanted to say something to Gloria's question just before I go to mine. Let me first go to Gulu before I go to Kabale, that scenario. So there is a situation where you can have an independent counsel just for a particular situation, maybe a crisis. An independent advisory council. It doesn't have to be in your structures. It doesn't have to be stuck in there. I would recommend you look up the WellSpan story. You know, it's an Indian family-owned business. I think they've been around 100 years. They had that crisis with Target. I think the issue was that they were not supplying cotton made out of Egypt. So I think some whistleblowers came online and said, no, but they are getting the cotton elsewhere. It's not Egyptian cotton. So just read up on WellSpan. And the leadership is commended for having created a panel of independent advisors, a council of advisors, just to deal with that crisis. So it could be crisis issue, and then, yeah, after that, they go. Obviously, some jurisdictions have 2 boards, like Germany, I think, is known that they have 2 boards, so it depends. America is known for being like me, your chairman and CEO, you know. Until recently, I think Bill Gates was chairman and CEO, so yeah. But now let me come to my questions. And I like the last one, self-care, because I think it's a bit easy, but to implement is the hard part. I think we all know that you must take care of both your brain and your body. So what do you put in your brain every day? What are you reading every day? What are you? Is it WhatsApps? Is it those videos that go around? Is it what is going in there? Because if your brain is not firm or strong, then you're going to be fearful of all these things that we want to confront. It's because you have not read up, you have not researched, you've not consulted advisors. So that is one way of taking care of your brain. Obviously, you could do mathematical puzzles. Yeah, or you could read books as well, just on self-care or on any other subject. But of course, the other one is to, make sure you sweat. make sure you sweat. When people stress me some days, I just run to some space, put my music on, and run it off. When you come back, you even have clarity of what it is of the solution at hand. Take your mind off things some days, some hours. Think it through, or even ignore it, pack it, and then when your brain cells have some oxygen back, and you're like, voila, I got the solution. So those are, for me, some of the easier things that you can do for self-care. But also, don't do it alone. Create a group of people that will hold you accountable. You said you'll be reading a book every day, or how many books does Bill Gates read a day, or a month? I think. Does he do 20? Yeah. And so there is a reason why he's also one of the richest people in the world. He's putting good stuff in his head. He's taking care of his brain and creating all kinds of solutions for us. So for me, it's the accountability. Don't have this big plan to take care of yourself alone and then not be held accountable. So I think that's one of the ways. Lastly, on young people, what they can do. Some organizations have started spaces for younger boards, for young non-execs to plug into board work. Some of them actually have even created what they are calling horizon boards, so that young people in management level can start contributing in there, and then these issues are articulated to the board. Others, it's not boards, it's just spaces where young people are given space to actually contribute to the board's mandate. There are many ways you can learn. I go back to mentoring. Look up the first time I went to board is because I looked up a mentor that I had identified to say, I want to sit on boards. And so I went to that mentor, I said, I want this. In the next 2-3 years, I want to be on a board. And you know, when you share these goals of yours with people who you respect, who are already doing this, they're going to also get you spaces where you can do your learning. So young people look for mentors, and also organizations now are creating those spaces. I think a good number of corporations have created some horizon boards.
Yes. Thank you. Grace, you want to add to that? Before Japheth?
I think
the secretary and board members who talk to mentors, junior staff, how they manage their communication. Board members who speak to junior staff. How do you handle this?
no, the point I wanted to add to Ruth's conversation, without contradicting what she has said, is I think young people should not be worried. I think the world has changed. Boardrooms are not looking for gray-haired people. They are looking for people who have substance in their what? I am a father of daughters, for example. Boards are not looking for women. They are looking for people, including women, with what?
Brain.
Young or old, gender or the other gender, abled or whatever, as long as this person puts themselves in that position of being attractive, the sky is the limit. That is my view, and that's what, using this example, that's what I tell my daughters. They are also young adults, so I tell them they are young, they are girls, so I tell them, no worry, as long as you have what Ruth has talked about, you will be sought after, as long as you keep around the right networks. Again, valor. You will be you cannot keep your star under wraps for a very long time before you are recognized. Sorry, Rachel, I wanted to.
No, that's okay. Thank you very much, Grace. Very good insights, and we're looking at the comments before Japheth comes on. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. We're not able to answer all your questions, but we commit to email everybody who logged on and signed online. We will respond to these questions, and we'll send you a poll. The poll will be sent online for you to give us feedback on how we can do better. Thank you very much, Grace and Ruth and Japheth. The last two questions before we wrap up. Thank you.
Yeah, I cannot miss the opportunity to comment on Joyce about career board member, as long as she was talking about me. But as Grace said, you know, first of all, some governance structures have introduced term limits, so you have to leave the board after serving 6 years or 9 years. But then also, I think the positive message is there are still many young people who are joining boards. I can use the example of Stanbic Uganda Holdings. We've got two CEOs who are also board members. They are CEOs of subsidiary. They're in their early 30s. One time I was asked this question at the AGM that were there when I was the chair of the Stanbic Bank Uganda, where there are no young people on the board. And I said, but I have two board members here, both ladies, and one is 40, one is 41. Isn't that young? Of course, for me, who is 70, that is very young. Those are babies. but that's true, and it is changing. And we are looking for, not all the people are looking for the skills. But let me go to the two questions. Joel, you raised the issue of company secretaries, and Ruth did allude to that. I have always, when you listen to me, I have said, if you have an organization where you have the CEO and the chair, and there is a sort of paralysis between them, I can assure you, if you have got an effective, experienced company secretary, that company secretary is the one that is going to break that crisis, because the company secretary's role continues not to be very well understood. because people are always thinking about minutes and things like that. But if you look at the company secretary and the role they play in governance, the role they play in managing the board, there is no one who knows the board members better than the company secretary. I speak more to the company secretary, Rita, she's listening here, than I speak to Anne or Andrew Mashanda. I am dealing with all that. They know the board, they know the moods, they know the... Therefore, it is very, very critical that that role, it is a governance role, it is a role that the link between senior management and the board is the company secretary. They can play a very, very big role where you have a crisis. The emotional intelligence required of the company secretary is very, very high to judge situations. The one who will tell you, CEO, you want to bring this item to the board at this time? I know this board. I think you better wait for quarter 3 than quarter 1. So very, very important role that they play. And I agree with Hope that we will bring, we can bring them on the table, those who actually do it on a day-to-day. Now, the other question came from Tadeo. Tadeo, the board member who actually is in communication, not with EXCO, but with, did you call them junior staff, is an indisciplined board member. But there may be reason. You have to find out why is that happening. Yeah, why is that happening? That is indiscipline. But why is it happening? Is there the atmosphere and the dynamics in the board? Is the relationship between those, the CEO or the senior executive that they should be communicating with, has that broken down? So it is a signal that there is something that is broken in the governance system. So you better look at it. But board members should not really be bypassing, and the relationship should be there. I don't say you should not talk to them. In fact, we create situations we create situations where board members can interact not only with the EXCO, but the EXCO -1 or EXCO -2. But where you see that they are getting the information directly from somebody who is handling a case and the credit officer, then there is a problem there. You need to fix it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Japhet. Thank you, Grace and Ruth. And I know we've run out of time. I don't want to sound like a politician asking for 10 more minutes and another 10. But please allow me to ask the team operating the system to let Hajat Sebiala speak. Hajat Sebiala is one of the greatest supporters of any learning session that I know in Uganda. And I think on behalf of the panel and I would like to applaud you, Hajat, for that. She reads widely, attends every webinar that I know, and she's on several boards, and she's an activist in every right. Hajat Sebiala, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
For you to ask your question. Has she been unmuted?
Yes, I'm unmuted now. Do you hear me, madam?
Yes, we do, Hajat. You're loud and clear.
Okay. Well, it's very, very exciting to be here since it started. I'd like to thank all the panelists and everybody there. I wanted to find out from either of the panelists the key 2 things that are keeping the boards on the edge. The key 2, just 2. Because we've talked about so many, I just want to have a feel of those 2 key things that are keeping boards on the edge. And how can they stabilize to sit properly on the table or on the chair so that they move from the edge? I want to find out from Ruth also. We had that good story about USA and hiring the hackers. I'm only wondering what could have happened for the electoral system, because every time they complain of another country hacking into their electoral system, I don't know if you have any information about that. And to the young lady in the room there who talked about career board members, I am one of them and I have 0 regrets. But I actually pull up very many young ones to come. They learn from me, I mentor them, and they're coming up. So really, it's a good one. I really thank you so much for giving back to all of us, and we shall also do the same, or revenge for that matter. I thank you so much, and may God bless all of you. This is Hajat Sebiala, Hajat Green, Mama Insurance, Career Board Member. Yes.
Thank you very much, Hajat Seviala. Someone in the Hope says in the chat group she's an energizer. And Hajat, if we were the appointing authority, we would definitely recommend for you to be appointed into a ministerial post. We need many of you. Right. So your question, Hajat, is going to be the wrap-up. The team is going to use that for their 30-second, 1-minute wrap-up. The two things on the edge: how do you come back into the comfort of your seat, and how do you ensure you stay at the table? So starting with Grace, Ruth, and then Japheth will wrap us up. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Hajat. And thanks. I didn't know you were Madam Rachel. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks, colleagues in the room and online. I think for me, two comments. I think one is on the age. I think this whole advent of technology is clearly a matter that is not rolling back. It is a matter that we have to deal with. It's a matter that is affecting businesses. Some businesses are being killed by technology. Other businesses are coming up because of technology. I had never imagined in my life that I'll order food, and that food is put on a boda and it's brought on my dining table 10 kilometers away, and we eat it and wake up in the morning. But thanks to technology, I sit there, I don't even need to touch my wallet. I just need to press a few, I was going to say on my mobile phone, but on my iPhone. So, and then, you know what I'm saying? And then I have food. Life has changed. Biotechnology has come. Biopharma has come today. I mean, you can get treated by somebody so many kilometers away. So that, I think, for me, irrespective of the nature of business or service or good or life, it is part of our life. That keeps, I think, everybody, including boards, on the edge. The second issue is around stakeholder management. I think we have had the questions here in the room. We have had discussions around the dynamics. The dynamics are big and small, are far and wide. We just unpacked a little bit the issue of the problem we have with one parliament in another continent and another, geography closer home. But when we try to unpeel that, I think the stakeholder management issues are wider than only those two issues. We've thought about the dynamics between boards of directors and shareholders, directors and management. They are all stakeholder management issues. For me, those are critical, those are powerful, and those don't go away. Stakeholder management will probably not get substituted by technology. It still has to be managed by brilliant minds and intelligent people, willing people to make a difference. So for me, if you ask me to Hajati's question, those two, for me, are quite central and quite critical in the what is keeping boards on the edge. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Grace. Ruth, your 2 points that are keeping boards on the edge.
Are we sharing again? Thank you. I think the one thing that is tied to technology would be also the global war for talent. So this technology is out there: artificial intelligence, quantum computing, very complicated things, blockchain, but there is no talent that will have that multiplier effect for all of us to enjoy it maybe immediately or with the immediacy that it deserves, to solve poverty, to end hunger, to improve agriculture. We have all these world problems. So there is a sense of urgency around creating pools of experts that must then ensure that this technology has a multiplier effect in our lives, in our lifetime. in our lifetime, Japheth. So we need to, there is a sense of urgency around creating a global pool of talent that will indeed ensure that the technology that is meant to solve those problems solves them quickly and not just widens the wealth gap, gender gap, inequality gaps. So for me, I think, that war for talent. And the other one, which I saw a lot of during Trump's time, I don't know if it's still relevant, but there was a lot of protectionism back then. I don't know if it's still a current issue. And I think the lady that lost to Macron, I think also her agenda, if she had won, she was also saying, France is for the French. So you're going to see pockets of protectionism by different jurisdictions. So I think that is worrying. It will affect global supply chains, cost of labor, immigration issues. It has a wider impact for all of us when people now go back to their zones to say, you remember America is for America, buy America, So I think those are a bit worrying things for boards to think about, especially, global importers, global exporters, because of what did I say? What is the word?
Protectionism?
That
one. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Ruth. Thank you for your insights. And Japheth, I think, borrow Ruth's as well. Thank you.
So let not Grace monopolize the sharing. Don't talk about any number 5 here. To put it, of course, on the edge, Hajat, different boards, and it depends on which business they are in. There will be, if you are in transport business, definitely the macroeconomic environment is going to hit you very badly. So the macro, or in the short run, as I see now, any board that is not dealing or monitoring the macroeconomic environment and the geopolitics, issues of inflation, issues of exchange rate, issues of interest rates, that is a very, very, very big challenge for different businesses. And of course, the resultant effect, if you are in banking, people are going to borrow. If they borrow the money, it will borrow at a high rate. Are they going to be able to pay back? But talking about technology, I think cyber remains a very big issue. It moved. When I was looking at the key areas that corporates are going to face, it was a McKinsey study, and actually climate change had actually moved. ESG climate change had moved to number 1, and cyber had gone number 2, and diverse had gone to number 3. So cyber as a risk, and then the whole issue of climate change is going to be discussed. Now, you do know, and we all know, that we don't contribute to that carbon, whatever they are talking about. Ours is minimal. I saw statistics from NEMA. But the point is that there is a massive campaign, and it is a global campaign, that we have to pay attention to these things. So you cannot ignore it, and we've been talking about that. So look at the macroeconomy environment, because we do not know when this will end, and it is not only here. A country like the UK is talking about inflation of 14%. 14%. Now remember, those people in Europe at one time, interest rates were minus, -1. They paid you to borrow money. If you did it for us here, would be very happy, wouldn't we? Yeah. But that is what is happening now. So you've got to watch because it's not local. It has become global. Grace talked about the technology. Ladies and gentlemen, remember during COVID period, what technology and what Jumia's and the Kikubo Online and all those things did for us. We could not have, I don't think could have survived, many of us, without being able to order things online and so on and so forth. Now, we are a long way to go. In some countries, I know my brother lives in Austria. During COVID period, there was no cash being used at all. You could only use your credit card or a digital method. So we need to get there. The lessons learned is that technology we need to learn from that. But I think those are issues that we have got to be discussing, and I think Hajati, if you don't do that, you'll just fall off the chair in the boardroom, and people may depends on how you fall. And I don't want to talk about falling when Rachel is here. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much.
Yours. You don't need this, eh? Yeah, okay. We are all equal, but some are more equal than others, eh?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Thank
Please join me in thanking our very, very competent panel. And another round of applause for the people in the room and the people online. We still have 176 people. Thank you very, very much. Very interesting discussion. Some people have been sending me messages directly saying they need policymakers at the next session. So people from NITAU, people from ICT, Honorable Bariomusi should be here. The people who are going to drive the technological advancement that we're looking for in the country. We could go on, but because of time, we now have to stop. We're going to continue the conversation inside, in-house, for those who are here with us. For the rest of you, our next Boardroom Masterclass is going to be end of November, because of the Christmas period, so we will not get into December. It will be end of November. It's a free session again. This is mentoring board members or board members to be, those aspiring to be board members. Again, we remind you to volunteer. Those trying to get onto boards, please put your hand up. Go to Ruth. She says she has no board. Why don't you talk to her to create a volunteer board at UTL? Please volunteer. There are so many opportunities out there. So on behalf of the team and I, we would like to thank you all once again. Please clap for the team on the technological front. Thank you, the organizers. And we wish you all a very safe and good evening, and see you next time. As indicated, the documents, the recording will be emailed to you. Everybody who registered online, you will get a recording of this. A poll will be sent to you for you to be able to give us feedback in order to get better. And the questions that were not answered will be answered by the panelists and emailed to all of you.
Can I disrupt? Like, you know, we talked about disruptors. Can we please give a round of applause to our speaker, our moderator, and so on for the great work, because you never get a chance to thank yourself. Thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Japheth. Thank you, Ruth. Thank you, Grace. And please clap for yourselves again. And we now declare the webinar closed. Thank you all. Have a good evening.
Right. Are we off? We're off? Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you.
It's not on.
Panelists. Yes.
Not on.
No, we are
It's
off.
not on.
Yes, we are off
But
online.
you're holding.
So it's just for this place.
It's not on. His microphone is not on.
Yeah,
We have so many questions.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Let's first. Let's first.
let people interacting with photos. You are taking photos of us. You're taking those group photos that are out there. Yeah.
They're still online.
Are we still online?
Yeah.
Why are we still online?
Could we kindly, we're still online, members are still
Ivan,
seeing us. Ivan,
we're
we're
still
still
online.
online. Ivan, please switch yourself. It's not. People are seeing us. Hurry, over. Please stop recording. Gentleman on the camera, thank you very much. Emma, please switch off. Where are people are texting
No,
me.
they have disabled it.
Okay.
Yes.
Emma, you are not reading any of my messages. You guys, you have not done me well, but we will discuss in-house matters. You are not reading my messages. You're supposed to be chatting and engaging with people. So many things, yeah. I kept on telling you, read the messages, respond to me. No, not even that. Just engaging people. Emma and Ivan's role is to chat with people. Start people from the zero. They are doing nothing. I've been doing it. That's what I'm saying. And I've been doing it. Emma and Ivan in Excite chat room. Please invite people for tea.
But this one, yeah.
Please.
Yeah, we're learning. Don't get too upset. It's learning.
Rachel. But we did not. You guys did. Do you know, had we not lost like 30 minutes, we were on time. Yes, yes. No, because of that very thing we told them when we were relaxing down. They hadn't done at prep. And yes, no, yesterday I told them guys, not take your food. They are looking for more than use Pitaka. This is still.
But guys, we have said we have some time. You know, this thing is. Okay. On the washroom, then we can talk about the different,
We're still
the
here.
different dimension that it is
Yes.
taking.
Yes, and all this for nothing. Thing and they will come to us.